My name is Cheryl Alberts, and I'm very happy to be here with you tonight. We're going to have, our program is in 3 parts tonight. The first and the third are the shortest, and the second is the longest. And for the second part, we may take even a couple of breaks. The first part is about awareness of pesticide safety. The second is safety and following label directions, all those handouts there. And the third is on integrated pest management, or IPM. I certainly am not an expert, but I hope that we can learn from each other and share with each other and have a good time. I'm not a master gardener, but I come from a long family of gardeners. My family has a big garden every year. My mom is 84, and last year she planted 40 tomato plants. She planted them and staked them and hoed them and watered them and canned them and made juice from them. I had maybe 12 plants. So we can all still learn from each other no matter what stage of gardening we're in. Okay. We're going to talk about risk. Terry mentioned earlier that we're going to pay attention to labels and what we wear when we handle pesticides. And we're going to try to reduce the risk factor when we handle pesticides, no matter how safe they're supposed to be, or if they're natural or organic. They all carry some risk. So we'll talk about that. Integrated pest management is an approach to pest control. It uses 4 main ways, and I should say that your handout is for part 2 mostly, so this isn't going to be in your handout, but this is just kind of general. IPM uses biological, cultural, physical, and chemical controls. And we want to emphasize that chemical control is used kind of as a last resort. We don't want to give people the idea that the chemicals are a silver bullet for any problem. We may not even have a problem. IPM uses a lot of education. It identifies what you're dealing with. You have to know what you're dealing with. And as master gardeners, I'll bet you get a lot of phone calls where people don't know what they're dealing with, and you'll have to ask a lot of questions to try to get at what the problem is. Okay. Overall, we probably take pesticides a little too casually or lightly. They've certainly been around a long time, and often they're packaged in pretty boxes, so we think, that it's something nice in there. And we'll talk about some incidents on what happens when you don't follow the label directions. And we'll do that right now. And as we're going through these, be thinking of examples that you could share of your own, because I think we probably all know of something that's happened. These happened to occur in California. We're not picking on California, but they happened there. Okay, 2 kids are playing. And what do you think they're playing with here? The aerosol can that is a can of pesticide. So the baby ends up with a shiny face and laughing, and the mom comes in and sees one child spraying the other, and she bathes the child and takes the baby to medical care, and this one ends all very good and fine. So why do you think that happened, this particular incident? Why would one child spray the other in the face with a spray? It was not kept out of reach of children like it probably should have been. Yeah. It's got some activity and motion to it. improper storage, and children should never have access to pesticides. This is a little more serious. A resident applied aluminum phosphide pellets to a squirrel hole next to the garage and added water. If you remember the first of this year, I think it was about January 2nd in Amarillo, the aluminum phosphide was in the news where someone had obtained on the black market, most likely, this product and put it under the home to get rid of something. The fumes started to bother people in the house, so someone went to wash away the aluminum phosphide underneath. And when someone arrived at 5 o'clock in the morning, that person found a house full of very sick people. And 4 children died from that. Aluminum phosphide is highly toxic, and when you add water to it, it kind of activates it. So you can imagine what happened here. This product can explode, start fires, and as I mentioned, kill people. In Nebraska, there was supposed to have been an incident where somebody put aluminum phosphide into a bucket of water and dumped it down the storm sewer as well. So know what you're dealing with. I guess is the take-home message here. Aluminum phosphide is a restricted use pesticide. Where it poured it down the storm sewer? I don't know. I mean, it exploded, so I don't know if it destroyed the street or what. Did anybody else hear about that? It could have been some time ago, but the one in Amarillo was just early this year. Now we're going to move on to some lighter cases. A lot of these have to do with people doing yard work, apparently in the summertime, and having some refreshment while they work in the yard. This man drinks alcohol while spraying pesticide on his plants on a hot day. The upshot of this, while a man is doing yard work and drinks alcohol, what he actually is drinking is pesticide from a measuring cup. He spit it out, vomited, and could not explain why the ready-to-use product was in the cup, or why he drank from a measuring cup. So obviously you have to pay attention. This man was in the shower and sees ants in the bathroom. So he sets off the bug bomb and goes ahead and has his shower as the bug bomb is going off. The comment is, why is it always a man? Yeah, so he had symptoms. Obviously did not read the directions. Late at night, this time it's a woman, has a soft drink bottle in her shed at night and drinks from it. It tasted bad. She thought it had gone bad. Her daughter later told her that a gardener friend had given her weed killer. It was labeled as grass killer, but it was not obvious in the dark. You'll hear a lot of these incidents where people pour pesticides and other products into pop bottles or drinking water bottles. I guess because they're handy and they're everywhere. Yeah, well, it was labeled, this one was labeled and she didn't see it in the dark. Okay, and here is a case where a man wants to borrow bleach from another individual, goes over and the individual wants to give him the whole bottle, but the neighbor won't take the whole bottle. He just wants a little bit, so he pours it into his water bottle. And then gets a phone call and walks off and leaving the child, who has a habit of drinking out of bottles to drink some bleach. The child got sick and was taken to the hospital. Okay, this is one of the more unusual ones, I think. This man buys insecticide to kill rats. Insecticide to kill rats. The man planned to mix the powder with water, and when he opened it, the powder must have gotten onto his face. He developed symptoms, and probably with his same hands that he used to open the container, tried to make himself sick, and he got sicker, and his wife took him for medical treatment. So there's a lot going on with this one where he obviously was not using the right product and not using it safely and not thinking things through. This person doesn't read the label on an aerosol insecticide, stands on a stool to spray up in the air toward ants 3 to 4 feet away, and got sick a few hours later. Had this person read the label, he or she would have said that it said to hold the can 1 foot from the surface, not 3 to 4 feet, and not to spray in the air. It was probably a crack and crevice type product. So all of these, you can just imagine that the people did not read what they were using. Okay, you can imagine what happens here. It's time to start grilling, and there's some ants in the grill from last year, or ants in the grill. So he treats the grill with ant repellent, and then later cooks his hamburgers on it and gets sick. And he was sick all night. Yeah, I think we can all think of better ways to do things. Okay, man takes a bathroom break while spraying for ants, and the child gets a hold of the sprayer and sprays the toaster, and again, the parent thought that the sprayer was inaccessible, or that the child couldn't spray it, but obviously did. So this is just a few things that can happen from California. Does anybody have any examples of things that they've heard about or seen or experienced that they would like to share? Okay, we have someone here, and I think rather than repeat the story, I'm just going to let you talk into this mic.
I took a call from a guy who was trying to kill a rose bush, and he had cut it back so that it had no foliage, and he doused the roots and what was left of the stems with pure glyphosate, and it didn't kill it. And he wanted me to tell him what to do to kill the rose bush. And I told him that he had created a situation, and he had used the glyphosate improperly and against label instructions, and that he needed to pay attention to what was going on with that sort of thing, that it was a foliar product, that it had to be applied to the foliage. And as long as he was digging around in the roots, why didn't he just dig the damn thing up?
Okay. Did your client think that was good advice?
He was angry with me that I didn't think that he had followed a good procedure, and he hung up.
Okay. But sometimes you got to be firm. Did you have an example?
I knew a man who had slugs in his soil, and decided to use arsenic to kill them. And after he put the arsenic on the ground, he got down on his hands and knees and rubbed it into the soil with his bare hands. And we saw him for arsenic poisoning.
Oh dear.
He survived, but he had some serious symptoms.
Okay. Well, it can happen, and people just don't think. Okay. Well, I'm going to tell one on kind of myself. This is my dog, Lady, from many, many years ago. Lady, and those of you who were here last year know the story of Lady, my dog. She was a sale barn dog, which means there was a box of puppies at the sale barn, and I went home with one. She was a good little dog, and she was always up for an adventure, out exploring. She one time got into a porcupine, so we had to take her to the vet for that. But when she wasn't exploring, she liked to lay next to the house, on the south side especially, because that's where the sun beat down on the house. And she laid in my mom's flowers, and even my mom didn't say anything about Lady laying in the flowers. But one day I said, something is wrong with that dog. She doesn't look right. And she was kind of unsteady and probably kind of glassy and just kind of odd and still. And so I said, I'm going to take her to the vet. And so I took her to the vet, probably the same one who pulled the quills out of her nose when she got into the porcupine. But the vet said, what's that smell? I smell something with this dog. And I said, well, gee, I don't know. You mean when?
Yep. So they can talk.
Okay.
Instead of you having to take it off.
Okay. Okay. The vet said, what's that smell? I smell something on this dog. And I said, gee, I don't know. Dad sprinkled some Thimet around the house. And he said, well, that's it. That's what I smell. Thimet smells, it's an insecticide, a field insecticide, and it smells kind of like rotten cabbage. And my dad's theory was, if he sprinkled this around the house, we wouldn't have bugs in the house. But we didn't have bugs in the house anyway, but this was to make sure they wouldn't come in. And he sprinkled it liberally. And so there was my dog laying in this field insecticide. And the vet said she probably got her skin irritated, and she probably licked her skin. So not only did she get it absorbed through her skin, but she probably ingested it orally as well. So I had no idea that my dog was so sick from this insecticide. But the vet gave her a bath. He gave her some activated charcoal to get it out of her system. He gave her some, I think it was atropine. And in the end, he did save her, but he didn't know if he could. And I was just stunned that my dog could get so sick from an insecticide. So we had the dog for many happy years after that, and that veterinarian ranked very high on my list. So, okay. From our stories from California and from what the gentleman here said, what can we learn from all of these situations as we wrap up part 1 here on awareness? Read labels. It's the first one. Okay, you ought to always keep products like this out of reach of children. Never leave the pesticides unattended. Probably want to keep some poison control information handy. Pesticides in the original containers. So those are a few things to take away from this first section. Okay, I'm going to set up now for part 2, which is our long part. So does anybody have any comments? If you do, I've got this mobile mic here that I can pass around while I'm setting up for part 2.